The email glowed on Marcus's screen like a death sentence. Final warning, excessive time off. His daughter's school photo smiled up at him from his desk, oblivious to the storm brewing. 8-year-old Lily had another doctor's appointment tomorrow, her third this month. His boss wouldn't care. Marcus closed his eyes, remembering the words hissed at him just yesterday, "Look again and you're gone." But instead of fear, a strange calm washed over him. He smiled. Sometimes, the end of one road reveals a better path forward. If you're enjoying this story of resilience and transformation, please hit that like button and subscribe to catch more inspiring content that might just change how you view life's challenges. Marcus Jenkins hadn't always been a single father working in corporate middle management with a perpetually disapproving boss. 5 years ago, he had been half of a power couple, married to Elaine, a brilliant attorney. They lived in a downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the city skyline. Their life had been a carefully choreographed dance of career advancement, networking events, and planning for a future that seemed as solid as the skyscrapers outside their window. Then came Lily, unexpected but immediately adored. And just 18 months later, the diagnosis that changed everything: juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. The medical terms had washed over Marcus like a foreign language, but the implications became clear quickly enough. Lily would need ongoing care, frequent doctor visits, and a parent who could be present. Elaine tried. They both did. But the strain of balancing high-powered careers with a chronically ill child created fractures that widened with each missed meeting, each cancelled business trip, each night spent in hospital waiting rooms. "I can't do this anymore," Elaine had finally said one night, her voice hollow with exhaustion and defeat. "I'm not cut out for this kind of life." 3 months later, she was gone, transferred to her firm's London office, sending support checks but rarely calling. Marcus was left with a 3-year-old who didn't understand why mommy had disappeared, medical bills that seemed to multiply overnight, and the sudden, terrifying responsibility of being everything to someone who depended on him completely. He had downsized immediately, trading the condo for a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a suburb with good schools. He had taken a step back in his career, moving from a high-pressure marketing director position to a middle management role at Pinnacle Enterprises that promised more regular hours. The pay cut hurt, but the schedule made it possible to be both breadwinner and caregiver. For 5 years, he had made it work. Not perfectly, not easily, but he had kept their little family of 2 afloat. Until Richard Hargrove became his new department head 6 months ago. "Jenkins. My office. Now." Marcus looked up from his computer to see Hargrove's stocky figure retreating down the hallway, the back of his neck already flushed with the anger that seemed to be his default emotion. Around him, colleagues studiously avoided eye contact, the silence in the open-plan office suddenly deafening. With a quiet sigh, Marcus saved his work and stood, straightening his tie, a small act of dignity before what he knew would be another humiliating dressing down. Hargrove was already seated behind his imposing desk when Marcus entered, not bothering to look up from the personnel file open before him. "Close the door," he said, still not making eye contact. Marcus did as instructed, then stood waiting. The office was aggressively masculine, dark wood, leather chairs, and framed certificates that Hargrove had positioned to be visible from every angle. A shrine to his own importance. "Do you know how many days you've taken off in the past 3 months, Jenkins?" "I believe it's been 7, sir. All for medical appointments for my daughter." 9, Hargrove cut in, finally looking up with cold gray eyes. 9 days. Plus the 2-hour lunch breaks when you claim you need to pick her up from school for emergencies. Her condition sometimes flares unexpectedly. "I don't care." Hargrove's voice was flat. "This is a workplace, not a charity. Everyone here has problems. Everyone here has families. But somehow, they manage to show up and do their jobs without constant disruptions." Marcus felt heat rising in his face but kept his expression neutral. "I've never missed a deadline. I've been completing all my work, often from home after hours to compensate for. After hours doesn't help me when I need someone in a meeting at 10 in the morning, Hargrove snapped. This isn't a work-from-home position. We need reliability. Commitment. The implication that Marcus lacked commitment made his jaw clench. He had sacrificed sleep, personal time, any semblance of a social life to balance his responsibilities. But explaining that would only sound like excuses to a man like Hargrove. I understand, Marcus said quietly. I'll do better. Hargrove leaned back in his chair, a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He enjoyed this, the power, the control, watching people squirm. You've said that before. I'm not convinced. So let me be crystal clear, this is your final warning. One more absence, one more late arrival, one more early departure, and you're done. Look again and you're gone. Understood? Marcus nodded, his mind already racing ahead to tomorrow's rheumatologist appointment that had taken 3 months to schedule. Understood. Good. Now get back to work. The Westridge presentation needs to be redone. The client didn't like the direction. This was news to Marcus. When did they provide that feedback? This morning. While you were dropping your kid off at school instead of being here for the 8 a.m. call. The workday starts at 9, Marcus said before he could stop himself. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. For people who want to keep their jobs, the workday starts when I say it does. The revised presentation is due tomorrow morning. And Jenkins? I expect you to be present for the client meeting at 10 a.m. sharp. The same time as Lily's appointment. Of course. Yes, sir, Marcus said, turning to leave before his expression could betray him. Oh, and Jenkins? Hargrove called as Marcus reached for the door handle. Your performance review is coming up next month. I'd hate to see your family situation impact your compensation. Children are expensive, I hear. Especially sick ones. The threat was barely veiled. Marcus didn't trust himself to respond, so he simply nodded and left, closing the door with deliberate gentleness when what he really wanted was to slam it off its hinges. Back at his desk, he stared at his computer screen without seeing it, his mind a whirlwind of anxiety and anger. Around him, the office continued its normal rhythm, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the occasional burst of forced laughter from the break room. No one approached him. They had all witnessed enough of Hargrove's targeted harassment to know to keep their distance, lest they become collateral damage. Marcus pulled out his phone and looked at the calendar entry for tomorrow, Lily, Dr. Patel, 10 a.m. He couldn't miss it. The specialist was booked months in advance, and Lily's pain had been increasing. But he also couldn't lose this job. Not with their health insurance, not with the mortgage, not with the stack of medical bills that seemed to reproduce on his kitchen counter no matter how many he paid. He was trapped, cornered by a system that demanded impossible choices from parents like him every single day. As he sat there, paralyzed by his impossible situation, an email notification appeared on his screen. From Hargrove, sent to the entire department. Mandatory team building event this Saturday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Attendance will be noted and reflected in performance reviews. Saturday. The day he had promised to take Lily to the Children's Museum after weeks of her asking. Another promise he would have to break. Another disappointment he would have to explain to those trusting brown eyes. Something inside Marcus shifted then, a tectonic movement of the soul. He had spent 5 years contorting himself to fit into a world that wasn't designed for people with responsibilities like his. 5 years apologizing for being a parent. 5 years accepting less than he was worth because he needed the stability. And where had it gotten him? One illness away from unemployment. One cruel boss away from poverty. He opened a new browser tab and, before he could second-guess himself, navigated to a website he had bookmarked months ago but never had the courage to explore, Jenkins Digital Marketing Solutions. His side project. His dream. His contingency plan that had remained theoretical for too long. For the past year, he had been taking online courses in digital marketing during the precious few hours between Lily's bedtime and his own exhausted collapse. He had built a portfolio by helping friends with their small businesses, working for experience rather than pay. He had a business plan drafted, gathering digital dust in a folder on his home computer. He had been waiting for the right time to make the leap, when Lily was older, when they had more savings, when the economy was better. But sitting there, with Hargrove's threat hanging over him like a guillotine, Marcus realized there would never be a perfect time. There would only be now, and the choice to either continue bending until he broke or to finally stand up straight. With a strange sense of calm, Marcus began to type an email to his 3 closest contacts in the industry, former colleagues who had gone on to positions of influence. People who had reached out over the years with projects they thought he might be interested in, if he ever decided to go freelance. "I'm finally ready to take that step," he wrote. "If those opportunities are still available, I'd love to discuss them." By the time he left work that evening, he had 3 meetings scheduled for the coming week. And for the first time in months, he smiled as he drove to pick up Lily from her after-school program. "Daddy, are you mad at me?" Marcus looked up from the pasta he was stirring to find Lily watching him with worried eyes, her small face pinched with concern that no 8-year-old should have to feel. "Of course not, sweetheart. Why would you think that?" She shrugged, looking down at the homework spread across the kitchen table. "Because I have to go to the doctor again tomorrow. And your boss doesn't like when you take me." The fact that she knew this, that she had absorbed his stress, interpreted his tense phone calls, perhaps even overheard his venting to his sister on the phone, made Marcus's heart ache. Children shouldn't have to worry about being burdens. They shouldn't have to feel guilty for needing care. He turned off the stove and moved to kneel beside her chair, gently tilting her chin up until she met his eyes. "Listen to me, Lilybug. You are never, ever a problem. Taking care of you is the most important job I have, and I will always, always choose you. No matter what. But what about your work? What about the money for my medicine?" So much awareness in such a small person. It wasn't fair. "You let me worry about that," he said firmly. "That's my job as your dad. Your job is to be 8, to do your homework, to play with your friends, and yes, to go to doctor's appointments when you need to. But never to worry about whether taking care of you is too hard for me. It's not. It's the best thing I do." She studied his face, searching for the truth in his words. Then, with the resilience that constantly amazed him, she nodded and offered a small smile. "Okay. Can I have extra cheese on my pasta?" "You can have all the cheese in the universe," he promised, dropping a kiss on the top of her head before returning to the stove. As he finished preparing their simple dinner, Marcus's mind returned to the decision he had made at the office. It was terrifying, the idea of leaving a steady paycheck, benefits, the known quantity of employment for the uncertain waters of entrepreneurship. But watching Lily now, seeing how she had internalized his workplace stress, he knew he couldn't continue as things were. Something had to change. And if Hargrove was determined to force his hand, perhaps it was time to thank the man for the push. After dinner, once Lily was tucked into bed with her favorite stuffed elephant and the night light casting star patterns across her ceiling, Marcus opened his laptop at the kitchen table and got to work. He updated his resume, polished his portfolio, and drafted a business plan that made his heart race with both fear and excitement. At midnight, he sent an email to Dr. Patel's office, confirming tomorrow's appointment. Then he drafted another email, this one to Hargrove, and saved it to his drafts folder. For the first time in months, he slept without waking, without the knot of anxiety that had become his constant companion. The next morning, Marcus dressed with unusual care, his best suit, the tie Lily had given him for Father's Day, cufflinks that had belonged to his own father. Armor for the battle ahead. "You look fancy," Lily observed as he helped her with her breakfast. "Is it for the doctor?" "No, sweetheart. I have an important meeting at work after I drop you off. It wasn't exactly a lie. He did have an important meeting, just not the one Hargrove was expecting him to attend. He dropped Lily at school with an extra tight hug, promising to pick her up at 9:30 for her appointment. Then he drove to Pinnacle Enterprises, rehearsing what he would say, steeling himself for the confrontation to come. The office was already humming with activity when he arrived. He nodded to colleagues as he made his way to his desk, ignoring the curious glances at his formal attire. He powered up his computer, opened his email, and found exactly what he expected, a reminder from Hargrove about the 10 a.m. client meeting, with a thinly veiled warning about the consequences of absence. Marcus took a deep breath, opened the draft email he had prepared the night before, and hit send. Then he gathered a few personal items from his desk, the photo of Lily, a coffee mug she had painted for him, a small plant he had nurtured for years, and placed them in his briefcase. At precisely 9:15, he walked to Hargrove's office and knocked on the open door. Hargrove looked up, irritation already clouding his features. "Jenkins. What is it?" "I'm preparing for the Westridge meeting." "I know," Marcus said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "I just sent you an email, but I wanted to deliver the message in person as well." "What message?" Hargrove's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "I won't be attending the Westridge meeting today. I have to take my daughter to her rheumatologist appointment, the one that's been scheduled for 3 months. Hargrove's face darkened. "We discussed this yesterday. I made myself perfectly clear." "You did," Marcus agreed, surprising himself with how steady his voice remained. "You said, look again and you're gone. Well, I'm looking again. My daughter needs me, and I choose her. Every time." "Then you're fired," Hargrove snapped, his face flushing with anger. "Clear out your desk and be gone by noon. And don't expect a reference." Marcus smiled, a genuine smile that seemed to unnerve Hargrove more than any argument could have. "That won't be necessary. I quit, effective immediately. My resignation email includes my 2 weeks' notice, but I'm happy to be relieved of that obligation if you prefer." Hargrove stared at him, momentarily speechless. This wasn't how these confrontations usually went. People begged. They apologized. They promised to do better. They didn't smile and walk away. "You're making a mistake," Hargrove finally said, recovering his composure. "Good luck finding another position with your constraints." "I appreciate your concern," Marcus said, still smiling. "But I've decided to stop looking for positions designed for people without families. Instead, I'm creating my own. Jenkins Digital Marketing Solutions launches next week. In fact, I should thank you, your management style has been quite the motivator." He placed his company ID and parking pass on Hargrove's desk. "I've already transferred my current projects to the shared drive with detailed handover notes. My clients have been notified of my departure." "Oh, and Richard? The Westridge presentation you said needed revising?" "The client actually loved it. I checked with them directly yesterday afternoon. They were confused about your feedback." Hargrove's face went from red to white. "You contacted my client behind my back?" "I contacted our client to clarify their needs," Marcus corrected. "Something you might consider doing more often. Goodbye, Richard. I wish you well." He turned and walked out, closing the door gently behind him, leaving Hargrove sputtering in impotent rage. As he walked through the office toward the exit, Marcus felt lighter than he had in years. Colleagues watched him pass with expressions ranging from confusion to admiration. A few looked like they wanted to speak but weren't sure what to say. At the elevator, a hand caught his arm. It was Diane from accounting, a fellow single parent he had often exchanged childcare tips with in the break room. "Are you